Hey everybody, Roger here. I want to talk to you guys today about something that has been leaked, or I'm not sure if that's the correct word for this, but a memo got out. It was a DACA leaked memo, and I guess the subject, or the article that was done by the Daily Caller, or reported by the Daily Caller, was Dreamers are critical to Dems' future, to the Dems' future electoral process. So that's the headline. And the memo couldn't state it any more clear as well. And you might also, as a side note, I'm not going to be discussing this here, but as a side note, you might want to watch the Tucker versus, I think it's Hernandez, who's also part of this group. Go watch that segment. It's about maybe 10 minutes long. Anyways, so the Center for American Progress Action Fund, I think they're also called CAP, they sent out this memo. The email stated, in a nutshell, that Dreamers are a critical component for the Dems' future success. I think everybody kind of already knew that. It's not something that you can't believe when Obama is on national television telling a Dreamer that it's okay to vote, or saying that it's okay, that if you're in this country, that it's okay to vote, even if you think that you're illegal or whatnot.
Many of the millennials, Dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country, are fearful of voting. So if I vote, will immigration know where I live? Will they come for my family and deport us?
Not true.
Okay.
And the reason is, first of all, when you vote, you are a citizen yourself, and there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, etc. The sanctity of the vote is strictly confidential in terms of who you voted for.
So this was co-authored by the former Clinton communications director, Jennifer Palmieri or something like that. And it basically stated to refuse votes. Overall, the message was refuse any votes for Republican spending bills that don't offer any sort of a fix for Dreamers. Now, granted, when it comes to Dreamers, my heart, when it comes to people in general, I think my heart is out there. If we're at a stop sign and I see, that there's a homeless person, with a sign or whatever, regardless if my heart tells me this person's faking it or not, I usually end up giving a buck. I do have a heart, and individuals do have their choices that they make in life. I'm not going to, subject people to a lifelong, a life full of tragedy and stuff. You got to uplift people every now and again. So for me, the Dreamers issue is a pretty big deal. I have a heart there. I don't have a heart for people who abuse systems like this. And I'll mention this later on down the line, but I think as Americans, we are ultimately responsible for the lack of protection that has allowed this influx of illegals to come here, be birthed here. It seems like it was almost done by design, but we never said anything about it up until now that it's starting to go crazy, and we understand that this actually is a voting mechanism in favor of democratic rule. So, we are responsible as a whole, for this happening. So anyways, one of the biggest things noted in the memo is the fight to protect Dreamers is not only a moral imperative, it is also a critical component of the Democratic Party's future electoral success. So, now, when you look at that in the long term, you see why they're fighting so bad for this. Right now, no Democrat can win on arguments of fiscal responsibility, of well-intentions, of good intentions, of things that actually make sense. Everything that they've delivered so far especially became clear during the Trump-Clinton election. They can't win an argument. They can't win anything that makes sense for it to be plausibly better for the United States as a whole. All they can win on are race, they can't even win. All they can ever bring up are issues that shouldn't matter. You know, issues of segregation, issues of race, you know, things that are non-existent, you know, gender equality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things that they bring up that they can't back up. You know, it's just, they have to resort to something like this. So this memo goes out, and I think it's, you know, they're really fighting hard for it. They need those votes. So the biggest thing for me in regards to, you know, any sort of items getting passed for, you know, in favor of DACA recipients to become legal or whatever, is to end chain migration. And I think this is one thing that the Democrats are going to try to fight for. Republicans, rightfully so, want to end it. I definitely want it to end. I don't think it should even be something that exists if we just enforced our borders and followed, you know, legal protocol for immigration. You know, what the damage is done. What's done is done. You know, we can't cry over spilled milk. Well, let's move on. Let's repair it. Let people come in through legal means. You know, you're taking your cut. In Mexico, there are all these people crossing over, trying to get the good life in America. But you know what? They're, in a way, in my opinion, they're kind of heartless and selfish and gluttonous because they're not staying within their own country to bring up their people. If they really had that much pride, if they really had that much love, they would probably end up doing that instead. I can't talk. I don't have that first-hand experience. Maybe I'm overstepping my boundaries here, but that's how I look at it. You know, as a minority myself, again, I am American-born. As a minority myself, I can relate to this in a cultural way, in a race way, I guess, ethnic race. But as an American, you know, and as an individual, wanting to not be burdened by this influx of people that we have, grown babies, you know, is how I look at it, because everybody's receiving some sort of benefit here and there. And we already give enough to our citizens that to take on the rest of the world and be the babysitter for them. I don't know how far I could stretch my personal pockets. I'd rather start seeing a lot of my bills go down personally. So anyways, who is affected by all this? The dreamers and the voters. The dreamers are affected because this could negatively impact them. Again, you know, I do feel, for the most part, that with our error of not enforcing the borders, the dreamers should stay. That's just how I see it. However, end chain migration. You know, it is that definitely has to go. There's no such thing. You know, and I have to look at Stefan Molyneux's argument as well. You know, well, he makes a valid point here. It is when somebody robs a bank, you don't give the things that they benefit from, in this case the money, back to disperse it among the family members. In this case, you know, let the kids stay. You know, I have to look at that as well. But you know, my mind keeps. I don't know. That's a really good argument, and I can honestly say I'm still siding with giving amnesty to the DACA. To the dreamers in general, with strict guidelines going forward. You know, if people understand that, that laws are going to be enforced, the wall will be built in the future, et cetera, you know, the people that do come here are going to be aware of that going forward. So, I don't know. You know, a little risk for, at this point, by allowing them to be citizens is. I know it's going to bite us in the end for votes. They most likely will be voting Democrat. But depending on how this pans out, you know, if it comes to be that, you know, they see that Trump has allowed them to stay, maybe they'll look at their votes in the future more fiscally responsive, I guess. I have no idea. But anyways, continuing on with how did DACA get so out of control? You know, a lack of enforcing the border, obviously. I think by design. I don't think it was unintentional. Incentive and benefits for employment, births, etc. So, you see all of these things that they're able to get away with here, and why wouldn't anybody want to take advantage of that? Especially when they see that if you can survive these kind of outcomes, then the risk is worth it. So they're going to risk coming here, and eventually the majority of them will get sanctuary in the sanctuary cities. They'll get benefits. They will get everything, welfare, everything that your heart desires, at the taxpayer expense. The other thing they benefit on is repeating crimes, and there's hardly any penalties. And the penalties that are thrown at them are hardly ever enforced. So again, you can see the case. I forget the woman's name, the young girl who was murdered in California by the coast, and how that ruling went. Knox, I can't remember her last name. Sorry, but you look at that as a prime example. The guy was a repeat offender. He kept coming back into America until he finally killed somebody. So again, at the state level, it's not enforced. Hopefully, federally, it is. And those are primary reasons. Again, I blame it on us as Americans. It's a disgrace that we let it get this out of hand. But as Americans, we are lazy in a sense in our heads at times on certain things. We think everybody's going to be looking out for us and our best interests, not knowing that there's agendas all the time happening. The Democrats are using. Dreamers, I say this to you. The Democrats are using you for their personal gain. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure as individuals, you guys are looking at this like, this wasn't our design. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. It wasn't. You came into this world in your spot in America, being born by an illegal immigrant, with that immigrant not understanding the consequences that you would have in the future with this issue coming up. I understand that these illegals want the best for their kin. I understand that. But at the same time, there's a certain lack of revolution that's missing, that's needed in Mexico at this point, if things are being done in a bad way, and I think that a certain level of responsibility has to come to the people there if they want change in their country. You can make Mexico America, or American-like. American-like. You don't have to run away from the problems. We all have our own problems, and we have our own problems here in this country, and we got to work through them as well. So, I think in the long term we're going to be more financially burdened as a country, as the United States, if chain migration and the wall are not enforced. It's the wall is key to basically promoting the sanctuary of the United States overall. So going back to all this, United States is going to end up becoming more financially burdened, with the cost of all these blue states. They don't know how to spend money. I mean, you look at it from a regional level. Look at what Maxine Waters has not done for her area. Look at what California as a state has not done for its people. Look at the taxes that are being, thrown at them. I mean, and then they're arguing right now that these tax reforms are going to burden the big blue states that spend a lot of money. I think Texas is part of this supposed, tax burden as well, but I don't know. I haven't looked that deep into that. But, all you have are your representatives and yourselves to blame, your votes, in those respective states that choose to get all these public funded programs for illegals, for sanctuary cities. You have your states to blame. You have your vote to blame. Don't put the burden on the rest of America. We didn't vote that way. And if my state that I lived in would actually be that way, I would probably end up moving out. I don't know. It really depends on, if I'm able to get a job in, a comparative job that what I have compared to what I have now elsewhere, and I would take it slow. I would basically look around until I found what I wanted. Anyways, there's a big cost in meshing cultures versus them adapting. So we've been going through this for the last 20, 30 years in kind of a spike like this. You know, we have English and Spanish things everywhere. Now we're starting to have, with the influx of, you know, China and other foreign countries coming in, both legal and illegal, there is no sense of adapting, you know, to American culture. There's more or less just people wanting to do what they want to and live how they want to, and not care about American law and way of life. You know, I think that is bad. There is no right for people to come to America. It's not a right. You know, rights are within the states and the countries that you're born in. You know, we have our rights here in America. You have yours over there as well. If you want to be part of our system, you know, you have to adapt to it. That hasn't been enforced. And we have this mess at this point that we see today. At least that's how I see it in my eyes. You know, not that the American dream isn't something to shoot for, but do it the way a lot of people have done it legally. You know, come here, the years and years that it takes. You know, granted, I'll give you this. You know, the price of coming in here and the time that it takes to come in here to gain citizenship should probably be reduced a little bit. But I think it's only so long just to ensure that you're going to be a good fit and that you're going to adapt. I don't know the specifics of that to know for certain, but it seems as though the people who do come here legally agree with me on that. So we're going to start, you know, schools are already starting to have multi-language. They're starting to have, you know, cultural things thrown in every now and again with, you know, you see schools in California or elsewhere that are trying to enforce, you know, understanding religions of people from other countries, and that should not even be part of the school system. Again, you know, I don't have kids, so I can't attest to. I don't really have an argument to that, just an opinion.
Hi, my name is Nam Yong Hoon. I am an American citizen. I always emphasize the importance and value of responsible quality education, including freedom, equality for all. Educating children should be your focus, not political or cultural indoctrination. You have a responsibility to do what is the best for the children, not to push an ideology that allows one group to bully others. Immigrants from many countries, they come here, strive to assimilate, to participate with the mainstream America from the minute they arrive in America. They do not try to impose their cultures and their native laws and ideology on Americans.
Okay, thank you very
Islam
much.
teaches that American laws are meaningless. This is wrong.
Thank you. Thank you.
By partnering with CARE, you have taken side against those you are responsible to protect.
Please conclude. Thank you very much.
This is beyond shameful.
Okay.
And please think over. Thank you.
The lawyer filed this lawsuit against the district this week on behalf of several parents. They don't like the district's plan to teach about Islam in schools as part of an anti-bullying program meant to protect Muslim students. Lamandry's lawsuit says that program violates the First and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution.
It appears as though they're showing a preference for one religion.
He adds the district's own statistics from this past fall don't justify singling out Muslims for protection.
There were only 7 incidents of bullying in the entire city, which represented 130,000 students. And of that 7 instances of bullying, they didn't even break it down by religious affiliation. So we don't know if any of those students were Muslims.
But anyways, then we're going to have all of these other things that we're going to have to adapt our country to. You can't have you can have a very diverse mix of individuals in America coming from all walks of life and all around the world. Anywhere from Zimbabwe, Mexico, South America, Europe, China, Australia, Japan, whatever. Everybody is welcome to the United States to mesh and blend with American culture. That's what makes American culture. But when you want to be a citizen and you don't want to adapt to at least the cultural norms of the American, then there's problems, especially when that comes in by the thousands. So we're starting to see an epidemic, in my opinion, of American culture in that way. So, that's going to cost us in the long run, to just imagine for something to be made in English is one cost. Now imagine a small company, producing multi-language things, and then later on down the line, what if it gets to the point where everybody has to be, all companies need to be receptive of different languages and different cultures and different sensitivities and whatnot. It gets to the point where a business will not even be able to operate because, they won't be able to afford all these translators, all these. I don't know. It just seems like it's going to get out of hand. I may be going overboard. But I do see that as one issue. Another issue is it's going to be difficult, and it has been difficult. Stats prove it's been difficult for low income and minorities, and a combination of both. If you're low income and you're white, or if you're a minority, black, Mexican, whatever, in America, Mexican-born American, specifically blacks, forced to stay in poverty because these jobs are given to illegals. I've seen this in fast food restaurants. I've seen this in retail. I've seen this in a lot of public establishments. And that keeps our American-born minorities in poverty. That doesn't give them a stepping stone to move up, get into our working class world. Then they go out and commit crimes, because they don't have this opportunity, and they do feel oppressed. I mean, doesn't anybody see this? Doesn't anybody see the realities of this? America first. This is the theme of America first. It doesn't mean white first, like all these pansies think that it means. It doesn't. It means, putting Americans, regardless if they're legally. If they've legally migrated, regardless if they're black, regardless if they're white, Mexican, Japanese, Malaysian, whatever. America first. If you're any of those classes and you're an American, America first. You're first. That's what all this means, And my final thoughts are I do think what is moral and responsible is to enforce our border control. It goes back to the basics. That's when everything was operating right. But in this case, in my opinion, the best case scenario overall is going to be allowing dreamers, the few dreamers that we have, to stay. My heart tells me that that's the right thing. They are kind of in limbo land, and it was not their choice to be put in this scenario. They're not a sentient. They are a sentient being. They're not an inanimate object like money in the example I gave earlier. With that, we have to have a little bit of heart in this, and at the same time, make sure that we enforce things in the future. Those are my thoughts. Anyways, I hope this video helps, clarify at least my understanding. Do you guys have any different views? If you want to go and start a discussion in my video, that'd be great. Again, I say this as a American-born Hispanic male, of Mexican descent. So, it's not that I hate certain classes or certain people. I know sometimes even my family would, outside of some people in my family, a lot of my distant, cousins, relatives, whatnot, they don't like the way that I think. And I look at things in a progressive stance. I deal with a lot of my job deals in making sure that I'm very looking to the future, basically. So I think this way, and I do see Mexico is due for a revolution from its people, is due for an overthrow. If it wants that, it wants to better itself instead of actually coming in illegally. Start something there. I don't know. It's that decision is up to you guys, not the rest of us in America. But we do have a say with how our money is spent. And so far, we've done a shitty job of voting people in who are going to actually be working for the best interest of the Americans. And that's how we have the dreamers at this point. So I do say, it's our bad. We should own up to it. Let the dreamers stay at this point. I'm not really happy and content with that decision, but it seems like it's the right thing to do at this point. Beyond that, no exceptions for anybody else. That's my 2 cents. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Many of the millennials, dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country,